How's everybody doing? Welcome back to Real Fresh Fishing. I am Captain Zach Freeman, owner and operator of Real Fresh Fishing down here in Key West. Today we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to give you a rundown, basically a how-to video on the bait game, on what I do with the cast nets, and what size cast nets I throw, how to throw my cast nets, or how I throw my cast nets. And we're just going to give you a decently detailed video on the gist of it. I see a lot of videos that just show you how to throw the net. You know, there's a lot more that goes into it than just throwing the net. So we're going to try to get into the details of that and try to give you a quality video on the cast net game. Alright guys, so these are the two nets that I throw. I throw a 10-foot 1/4 inch and a 12-foot 3/8 net. Our baits are smaller down here. You know, we're throwing on pilchards, we're throwing on ballyhoo, things of that nature. So with the smaller pilchards and the shallow water, I like to throw something nice and light. This one right here is 1.3 pounds per foot. So it's a nice lighter net with that 1/4 inch mesh. You know, and you ask, why don't, you know, if I throw a 12, why don't I throw a 12 in the 1/4 inch? I do not throw a 12 in the 1/4 inch because once you get 12 foot of mono in this 1/4 inch, it becomes real thick and bulky to grab. Even with big hands, it's tough. On the 12 foot, my 3/8, see the mesh is a little bigger there. It's 1.6 pounds per foot. This is a heavier net compared to the two. It's almost double the weight of the 10-foot net. So going up to the top here, around the horn, on the difference in the two nets, the 10-footer seems to have these dividers along the horn. This is called the horn. Seems to have the dividers here for the braille lines, which connect down to the leads. Makes it a little harder to open the net. On my 12-footer, this is a Phytech Signature Series, has the open horn. I like the open horn better because it's nice and easy to slide all the way up to the end of the braille. And the difference on the where you connect it to your wrist, Signature Series has this like neoprene cuff, and just here, oh by the way, this one's a Betts Super Pro, it's just rope. The neoprene is actually a really good idea because accidents do happen on the boat. If you end up getting hung on bottom, boat's drifting away, if you hold tight for long enough, this will tear off of you. On the other hand, with the rope, pretty much screwed. For the 12-foot nets, with this 3/8 mesh, I'm using it anywhere that I need to catch bigger baits, and I want to get that surface area where I have bigger baits to catch, bigger pilchards, ballyhoo, stuff like that on the reef. And then with the 10-foot 1/4 inch, I'm using this for areas of high concentration of bait where I don't need as much surface area to fill my well. Smaller baits, you know, that 2 to 4 inch bait. Over here, when I'm going 3 to 6, 7 inch baits, that's where I'm at there on the 12-footer. All right. So how to load the net? Start right here. Attach it to your opposite hand of your dominant hand. So I'm right hand dominant. I want to attach it to my left wrist. We're just coiling the line up. Nice smaller coils. Nothing too exaggerated, because you don't want all this hanging down below the lead lines once you start to load the net. I'm here to my swivel. Take the horn, straighten your net out. Make sure your net is nice and straight. Very, very important. If you get a ginked up net, it's all twisted sideways like this, when you throw it, it's going to have a harder time to open. And that is not what we want. Alright, so I start. This is my 10-footer. Probably about 2 foot to start with, hand just below. And I'm coming underneath, closer to my body, to get a hold of the net. That's one load. Make sure all my legs are nice and straight and even. My second grab could be further down, just past my waist. Once again, hand underneath. Start with the backside, closest to your left foot. Make sure all the braille lines are not wrapped around the leg. And I take only about 1/4 of the net, maybe even less, and put that over my back shoulder. On the front side, with that lead line closest to me, you start from here, work it over the shoulder. 1, 2, 3, 4 throws for me. I probably take about 1/3 of the remaining, maybe a little bit more, maybe about 2 fists. Have my hand on the actual mono with that lead line past my fingers there. Drop it down and get the bulk of that net pretty much in the palm of my hand. The remainder, with this lead line, I pinch it in my fingers. And guys, when you're throwing the net, the release, you first of all, to build up, I like to build momentum, swing the net back. As I'm swinging the net back, I'm keeping an eye on where I want that net to go. This lead hand has a lot to do with it. You know, once you throw the net enough, you can get to a point where you can pinpoint where you want that net. Like with this 10-footer, I could throw it underneath the mangroves and spot it where I need to spot it for the most part. Been doing it for long enough now. So build back, and then you release your left hand and your right hand prior to releasing the lead lines off your fingers. The reason being, this back section of the net basically just going to fall off my shoulder here. This left hand, I want that net off my quarter, and then this front hand with the nada of mono is basically going to go right in front of me. When that happens, you've got 3 out of 4 points there, so that leaves you with your lead line pinched in your finger. Once you release that right hand with the lead line, pulls down. You'll see when I throw, it's not a hard motion, but you can get it to a point where you manipulate that lead and it'll actually spin those spin the entire lead line and kind of pop that net open. So if your net, you've already thrown your net, you're retrieving it back to the boat. A nice pop, pop, steady, pull, stop, drag those leads and purse that net. That net's going to wrap around, you're going to drag the leads and bounce it. If you pull quickly, those leads are going to come up off the bottom and basically get out underneath. This is for pilchers in the shallows. Deeper water, throwing on ballyhoo, wrap it up and go. But once you get it pursed up, your broadside on the boat, I see a lot of people, and I mean a lot, who just immediately grab it right here, sling that whole net in the boat. Terrible idea. That's the easiest way to get your net completely wrapped up. The easiest way to be stuck there trying to clean your net out and move those braille lines and get those lead lines on top, back over top of those braille lines, you'll be stuck there for 5-10 minutes trying to fix that stuff. So get a hold of your net right at the side of the boat and work your horn up to a respectable height. Of course, if you lift this horn all the way to the top here, to your swivel, you're going to let all that bait out. So get up to a point where you still have that purse down at the bottom, but it's not the giant purse to where the lead lines are all the way up to your horn. And when you do, depending on how much bait you have, a single grip on the brails and a nice tight grip may not be good enough. If you've got a load of bait in there, wrap underneath and get a full wrap on that net in order to lift. Keep those braille lines right where you want them, and you won't drop any bait out of the net. Another thing, net care and net maintenance. You've gone out, you throw the net that day, you get back to the dock, it's still sitting in your bilge or in a hatch, a bucket somewhere. Make sure you clean that thing out good. That salt on there makes the braille lines stiff, it makes the mono stiff, it makes the lead lines stiff. It just messes everything up. So make sure you rinse it. And once you rinse it, let it dry, and then put it somewhere that you can store it where the sun's not going to beat on it and it's going to stay dry. Me personally, I put both of mine in a shrimp basket, and I actually tuck them in the fish box once I clean the fish box out. And that's me with everyday use, or pretty much everyday use. If I was to not be fishing full time, I'd probably store it back in the bucket that it came in, tuck it somewhere, either my garage, under my house, in a storage bin somewhere, and wait for the next use. If it gets to a point where you feel like you need to clean it, salt away in fabric softener for a little bit. It actually softens up those lead lines. Like if it feels like that net's getting older and stiffer, put just a cap full of fabric softener in a 5-gallon bucket with the net and fill that bucket up, and of course put some kind of I'd say gallon jug or something with some weight on it to kind of sink that net into that water so it's not all poofed out on top, and let that sit in there for a few hours. I got buddies that let it sit in there for a day, I got buddies that let it sit in there for a couple days. Not necessary. A few hours, take it out, rinse it out extremely well, because if that residue is still on there from the fabric softener, next time you go to catch bait, throw the net, everything's great, put the baits in the wall, and all of a sudden they start dying. Now you know. Fabric softener was still in the net, kills everything. So once you get done with the fabric softener, make sure you thoroughly rinse that net, hang it dry, store it away. And I know this is not technically Castnet related, it's Castnet adjacent. If your well is not good enough to hold pilchards, there's no reason to go out and catch and kill them. Alright, so make sure your well is rounded off. Square wells are terrible for bait. Make sure your well's rounded off, and make sure your pump's efficient. If you have a 40-gallon well with a 500-gallon pump running to it, that is not sufficient. That is not going to work. I'll show you what I got going on here. By the way, my boat is a 28 whitewater, and it's also got the transom well. This transom well here is about 50 gallons. I'd say 45 gallons. That is my inlet right there. That is my inlet right there. That stainless piece. You see how it's at a 90? So that water gets diverted to the side of the live well rather than hitting those smaller baits directly and killing them. That one here only has an overflow up top here, and I will use that if I'm just getting bigger baits. If I just need a handful of larger baits, if I'm going to go bottom fishing. Not really the well that I use if I'm going to try and tuna fish where I need the maximum amount of baits to get out there and throw those live ones and to get those fish up and acting right and get the show going basically. For that well, or for this well, like I said, larger baits, Speedos actually do well. And this one here in this 45 gallon, I have an 1100 run into it. And the pump is also very close to this well. It's not like it has a long distance to travel. If your pump to your live well is a longer distance, you're going to need a bigger pump. And on my floor, let me show you guys here. On my floor well, I have this one tuned in pretty good here. This one's larger. I'd say mid 50s, 50 gallon well or so. And on this one here, don't mind that, I put a drain in just so I could drain the water while the boat's sitting so it's not so low. This is my drain tube, and of course I have another fitting, stainless fitting, just like on the other one, so that water's diverted along the side walls and it's not beating up those baits. I have my drain up top as usual, but down on my pipe I put a couple of holes to get basically all the stuff that comes off the bait, all their poop and all that, can go right down through the bottom there and actually funnel through, because if not, that will actually kill baits as well. And that pump is a 1600 gallon here. I have the rule 1600 on that right there. I also, this is Florida Keys standard, is I have a transom pump. The transom pump is for when I'm in super shallow water, basically the boat's hitting and rubbing up along the sand and stuff. I have a transom pump. That one there is only 1100 gallons, but I don't need it for as long. I only use that when I'm in super shallow water, when I'm trying to get those baits in the shallow water. And once I get out of there, I get out and I turn my big pump back on. And that one there also has a clam on it to where the water diverts and doesn't hit those baits directly. If you're catching, blue runners for bait, if you're going kingfishing or whatever, the diversion of the water doesn't matter as much. It still helps, always helps, but it doesn't matter as much. Like with our smaller baits, our pilchards, they are a finickier bait than usual or than most. And the herring and stuff like that, they don't like the water being directly hit upon them. They like that water to be in a nice circular motion to where they can swim. And it keeps a current as well. When you push that water straight into the middle of the well, it doesn't create a current, it just pushes water to the backside and it just doesn't circulate the way it needs to. So with that diversion, that 90 degree there, it pushes that water around the live well and properly displaces it, and it properly dumps, I would say, the bad water out of it. So very important that your live wells are correctly plumbed, are correctly pumped, because if, like I said, if you got a 500 gallon pump to a 40 gallon well, there's no point even catching pilchards because they're not going to stay alive. So if you've never thrown a net before, my suggestion to you, as others have in other videos, start out larger. Start out with that 10 footer, start out with that 12. More than likely start with the 10. And start with something light. Start with that quarter inch, 1.3 pounds a foot. Don't go super heavy on yourself unless the bait's deep, and then you just got to start with a heavy net. If you're on the west coast of Florida, your pilchards are out in that 10, 12 feet of water, 15 feet of water, deeper, you're going to have to learn how to throw that big heavy thing in order to get a good amount of bait to make it worth your while. It's honestly one of my favorite things to do. If I could just go out and throw the net every single day, I probably would do that. But I got to take you guys fishing too. So with that being said, it's going to be the end of it. Thank you guys for watching. As always, like, subscribe, comment on the video if you guys find it useful. If there's something that I missed that I should tell you guys about, and I'll put it in my next video or along the line, you guys go ahead and let me know down there in the comment section, and I'll do my best to get after it. Guys, thank you once again. Until next Wednesday.